For years we were taught that the solar system had 9 planets, then Pluto disappeared. But the strange part isn't that Pluto was reclassified. The strange part is what we discovered after looking beyond it. Because Pluto wasn't some lonely world at the edge of the solar system. It was one of the first clues that the outer solar system is filled with worlds far stranger than we imagined. And the 5 dwarf planets we recognize today are almost nothing alike. One may contain more water than you'd expect. One is shaped like a gigantic football because it spins so fast. One has a mysterious moon that is so dark scientists can barely see it. And one of them is so far away that sunlight takes more than 9 hours just to reach it. These aren't just smaller planets. They are 5 completely different worlds. And once you see what they actually look like, the phrase dwarf planet starts to sound completely wrong. Let's start with the closest one. Ceres is hiding between Mars and Jupiter inside the asteroid belt. For centuries, it looked like nothing more than another point of light. Then NASA's Dawn spacecraft arrived, and Ceres immediately became strange. Its surface was covered with hundreds of bright regions, and one of them was so reflective, it looked almost like a light shining back at the spacecraft. Scientists eventually discovered that these weren't lights at all. They were deposits of salt, material left behind by salty waters that had reached the surface and evaporated. Ceres may not even be completely geologically dead. Scientists have found evidence of cryovolcanic activity, where material from the interior rises toward the surface. Ceres looks like an asteroid, until you look closer. Then it starts looking like a world. But Ceres isn't even close to being the strangest, because now we leave the asteroid belt and travel billions of kilometers beyond Neptune. And that's where we found Haumea. Haumea might be the most bizarre looking dwarf planet of all, because it's not round, it's stretched, almost like a football. And the reason is incredible. Haumea spins unbelievably fast. It completes one rotation in roughly 4 hours. That rotation is so extreme that Haumea has been bowled into its elongated shape. But somehow it gets even stranger. Haumea has 2 moons, and it has a ring around the dwarf planet, hundreds of millions of kilometers from the Earth. And scientists think Haumea's bizarre history may explain all of it. Billions of years ago, a massive collision may have struck Haumea. That impact could have changed its spin, created its elongated shape and thrown material into space, forming the moons and the family of ice objects. So when you look at Haumea, you are potentially looking at the surviving remains of an ancient cosmic collision. And then, there is Makemake. At first glance, Makemake seems much more ordinary, a reddish frozen world, far beyond Neptune. But this one has a strange relationship with sunlight. Makemake is so far away that sunlight takes around 6 hours and 20 minutes to reach it. And the planet takes about 305 Earth years to complete just one trip around the sun. Imagine being born on Makemake and waiting more than 3 centuries just to experience one complete orbit. But here's what makes it interesting. In 2016, Hubble revealed that it has a moon, a tiny moon so dark and faint, that it's more than 1,000 times fainter than Makemake itself. And that tiny moon may actually help scientists understand Makemake's history, including its mass and density and potentially even where it came from. But perhaps the strangest thing about Makemake is what we still don't know. We haven't seen its surface in anything close to the detail we have for Pluto. We don't know exactly what is happening beneath it. We are looking at a world billions of kilometers away. And then we reach Eris, the dwarf planet that helped change the solar system. Eris is almost the same size as Pluto, but it's roughly 3 times farther from the Sun. And that distance is difficult to comprehend. The Sun is already just a tiny star from Pluto. At Eris, sunlight takes more than 9 hours to reach the surface, and Eris takes 557 Earth years to complete one orbit around the Sun. But it's not famous because of its distance. It's famous because we almost didn't know what to call it. When Eris was discovered, astronomers had a problem. Here was another world roughly comparable in size to Pluto. So if Pluto was a planet, why shouldn't Eris be one too? And if Eris was a planet, how many would follow? That question eventually helped lead to Pluto's reclassification and the creation of the dwarf planet category. And there is another strange detail. Eris has a moon, tiny compared with its parent, and orbiting from an enormous distance away. But there is something almost haunting about Eris. Its atmosphere can essentially disappear. When Eris gets farther from the sun, its atmosphere is expected to freeze and fall back onto the surface. Imagine a planet where the sky itself can collapse onto the surface. And then there's Pluto, the one everyone knows, but after seeing the others, Pluto starts looking different. Because Pluto isn't the weird exception, it's one member of a collection of incredibly strange worlds. Pluto has mountains and glaciers and a thin atmosphere. It has 5 known moons, including Charon, a moon almost half the size of Pluto itself. At its closest approach to the Sun, Pluto can actually be closer to the Sun than Neptune. When New Horizons arrived, it found a world that looked alive, with evidence of geological activity. And that's when the real story becomes clear. We weren't wrong because Pluto secretly deserved to be called a planet. We were wrong because we underestimated what these worlds were. 5 dwarf planets, 5 completely different stories. For billions of years, these worlds have been orbiting the Sun, completely unaware that one day we would finally look up and realize they were there. Maybe Pluto wasn't the end of the planetary story. Maybe it was the beginning.